Uncomfortable truth. America spends more per student than almost any nation on earth, over $15,000 per pupil annually. Yet our students rank 13th in reading and 25th in math globally. We're not failing because of insufficient funding. We're failing because of how we spend that funding. The Department of Education has grown into a bloated bureaucracy that funnels billions into administrative overhead, while classroom teachers buy supplies with their own money. Local schools know their communities' needs far better than federal bureaucrats in Washington. We need to return control to states and localities, implement universal school choice so parents can vote with their feet, and eliminate the stranglehold that teachers' unions have over education policy. When schools have to compete for students, quality improves. Look at charter schools in underserved communities. They're achieving remarkable results with less money per pupil because they're accountable to parents, not bureaucrats. The solution isn't more federal programs or more spending. It's competition, choice, and local control. Every child deserves access to a quality education, and the free market in education will deliver that better than any government program ever could.
Tom, I appreciate your passion, but let's talk about what's actually destroying American education: chronic underinvestment, particularly in communities that need support most. Yes, we spend $15,000 per student on average, but that number masks outrageous inequality. Schools in wealthy suburbs spend $20,000 to $25,000 per student, while urban and rural schools struggle with $8,000 to $10,000. Students in underfunded schools don't have access to advanced placement courses, modern technology, or safe facilities. Your charter school success stories cherry-pick data while ignoring that many charters perform worse than traditional public schools and that they often exclude special needs students and English learners who are expensive to educate. School choice without accountability doesn't create quality. It creates profit-driven operators who take taxpayer money and deliver substandard education. Teachers' unions aren't the problem. They're protecting educators from being scapegoated for societal failures. Countries that outperform us, Finland, South Korea, Singapore, they invest heavily in public education, pay teachers professional wages, and don't force educators to buy pencils with their own money. We need to fully fund Title I schools, modernize infrastructure, raise teacher pay to competitive levels, and reduce class sizes. Competition doesn't fix education. Investment in proven methods does.
Lily, you're absolutely right about the inequality. That's actually one of the strongest arguments for school choice. When families are trapped in failing schools because of their zip code, that's unconscionable. But let's examine why that inequality exists. School funding is tied to property taxes, which is a fundamentally broken system that Democrats and Republicans both perpetuate because wealthy constituents benefit from it. I agree we need to address that structural inequality, but not through more federal control. Here's where I think we can find common ground. Move toward weighted student funding, where money follows the child regardless of where they live, but add extra weighting for students with special needs, English learners, and those from low-income families. Schools that serve harder-to-educate populations get more resources, not less. Combine that with transparent school choice. Charters that don't meet performance standards get shut down, period. No more protecting failing schools, whether they're charter or traditional public. And let's address your point about teachers buying supplies. That's ridiculous and shouldn't happen. But it's happening because school budgets are bloated with administrative costs and consultants, not because overall funding is insufficient. Require 80% of education dollars to reach the classroom level. Teacher salaries, supplies, direct student services, and cap administrative overhead at 20%. That creates accountability for how money is spent while getting resources to where they're actually needed.
Now you're speaking my language on several points, Tom. Weighted student funding that actually follows children's needs. That's something I can work with. And you're right that administrative bloat is a legitimate problem that we need to address. But let me push back on your charter school faith. The evidence shows charter schools, on average, perform about the same as traditional public schools. with high variation in quality. The difference is that charters can exclude difficult students while public schools must serve everyone. Here's what I'll propose. Let's implement your 80/20 rule for getting money into classrooms. That's smart policy. But instead of unregulated school choice, let's create charter school accountability that matches what we demand from public schools. Charters must accept all students through lottery, cannot counsel out struggling learners, must serve special education populations proportionally, and must meet the same transparency and performance standards. If they don't, they lose authorization. This protects innovation while preventing exploitation. And here's the big one. Let's decouple school funding from property taxes entirely. Create state-level funding formulas that guarantee baseline per-pupil funding, then add federal supplements for high-need students. This way, poor communities aren't perpetually underfunded. Wealthy districts can still supplement through local levies, but every child gets adequate baseline resources.
Lily, I think we're building something here. Your charter accountability standards address my concerns about quality control, and I appreciate that you're not just defending a broken status quo. Decoupling from property taxes is huge. That's the structural reform that could actually create equity. Here's how I see this coming together. We implement your funding reform to create baseline equity, add my weighted funding for high-needs students, and apply stringent but fair accountability to all schools, charter or traditional. But let's add one more crucial element, performance-based block grants. States receive federal education funding in block grants rather than through rigid categorical programs, giving them flexibility to address local needs. However, they must maintain effort, meet equity requirements, and show measurable student progress. If outcomes don't improve after 5 years, funding reverts to direct federal oversight. This respects federalism while ensuring that federal dollars actually improve student achievement. And critically, let's phase out No Child Left Behind's punitive testing regime. Replace it with balanced assessment that includes growth measures, not just proficiency. A school that moves students from 2nd grade to 5th grade level in 1 year is succeeding even if students aren't yet proficient. We need to measure progress, not just status, so schools serving struggling students aren't automatically labeled failures.
Tom, this is exactly the kind of bipartisan framework that could actually pass. Your performance-based block grants with equity requirements and my funding reforms address both conservative concerns about federal overreach and progressive concerns about inequality. And hallelujah, you're willing to reform the testing regime that's been strangling creativity and critical thinking in schools for 2 decades. Let me build on your assessment proposal. Replace high-stakes standardized testing with portfolio-based assessment that includes standardized components, but also shows student work over time, creative projects, and real-world problem solving. Teachers submit representative student work to external evaluators, ensuring consistency without teaching to a test. This measures genuine learning and gives teachers professional autonomy. Now let's talk about what we're teaching. We need robust evidence-based curriculum standards, not federal mandates, but clear frameworks developed by educators, subject matter experts, and educational researchers. States can customize implementation, but the standards ensure that a student in Mississippi learns the same core concepts in biology or math as a student in Massachusetts. Include financial literacy, civic education, and media literacy as core requirements, skills every citizen needs. And here's where we invest. Early childhood education, particularly in underserved communities. Every dollar invested in quality pre-K returns $7 in long-term outcomes. It's the most cost-effective education intervention we have.
School choice isn't just about competition. It's about parental empowerment and recognizing that one-size-fits-all education fails children. Parents know their kids better than any education bureaucrat. Some children thrive in structured traditional environments. Others need project-based learning. Some need specialized STEM focus. Others arts integration. When we force every child into the same model, we guarantee that model will fail millions of kids. The beauty of choice is innovation. Charter schools and private schools can experiment with different pedagogical approaches, longer school days, year-round schedules, technology integration, whatever works for their students. Successful innovations can then be adopted by traditional schools. Competition drives quality improvement across the entire system. Now, I hear your concerns about equity, Lily, and they're valid. So let's build a choice system with real guardrails. Full transparency on student demographics, special education enrollment, discipline rates, and academic outcomes. Schools that engage in selective enrollment or push out struggling students lose eligibility for public funding. Random lottery admissions for oversubscribed schools. Transportation funding so choice isn't just for families with cars. And this is critical. Public schools get to keep facilities and some baseline funding even when students leave, so they can adjust without facing immediate closure. This prevents the death spiral scenario you're worried about.
Tom, I actually appreciate the guardrails you're proposing. That's more thoughtful than most school choice advocates admit is necessary. But let's talk about what happens in practice. When students leave traditional public schools, those schools lose funding but don't lose fixed costs: building, maintenance, utilities, administrative staff. This creates a spiral where schools serving the most challenging students have fewer resources year after year. Your baseline funding protection helps, but we need to think bigger. Here's my counter-proposal. Instead of framing this as traditional schools versus charters, let's create innovation zones within public school systems. Traditional public schools get the same flexibility that charters enjoy: freedom from certain regulations, ability to customize curriculum and staffing, extended learning time, but they remain publicly governed and must serve all students. This allows innovation without privatization. Pair this with your transparent choice system. Families can choose between traditional schools, innovation zone schools, and authorized charter schools that meet strict accountability standards. All schools compete on quality, not on their ability to exclude expensive-to-educate students. And here's the funding model. Per-pupil funding follows students, but with a 3-year phase-down for losing schools so they can adjust capacity without catastrophic cuts. Schools that consistently fail to attract students undergo intervention, new leadership, additional resources, or conversion to innovation zone with different approach. But we don't just abandon communities without quality schools nearby.
Innovation zones within public schools. That's actually brilliant, Lily. It addresses the bureaucratic rigidity problem without requiring privatization. If traditional public schools can have the flexibility to innovate, that eliminates one of the strongest arguments for charters. And your 3-year phase-down prevents the catastrophic budget cuts that destabilize schools. I think we can merge our approaches. Maintain space for true charter schools, because outside pressure keeps the system honest, but also create innovation zones so traditional schools can compete on equal footing. All schools, traditional, innovation zone, or charter, must meet the same transparency and accountability standards: random lottery admissions. Proportional special education enrollment. No counseling out struggling students. Public governance boards for decision-making. The key is parental information. We need a standardized, user-friendly platform where every school's data is comparable, not just test scores, but growth measures, college readiness, student satisfaction surveys, alumni outcomes, teacher retention, financial transparency. Parents make choices based on comprehensive information, not marketing. And let's add automatic interventions. Any school, regardless of model, that falls in the bottom 10% for 3 consecutive years must accept state intervention team that implements proven improvement strategies. If that doesn't work after 2 years, leadership is replaced or school is closed, and students are guaranteed seats in higher-performing schools with transportation provided.
Tom, we're actually building a comprehensive system here. Your accountability mechanism, automatic intervention for bottom performers, prevents both the charter problem of weak oversight and the traditional school problem of accepting perpetual failure. Let me add one more critical piece: community schools as an option within this framework. Schools that serve as hubs for wraparound services, healthcare, mental health counseling, after-school programs, parent education, food assistance. We know that poverty creates massive barriers to learning. Children can't focus on algebra when they're hungry, haven't seen a dentist in 3 years, or are dealing with untreated trauma. Community schools address those barriers holistically. Research shows they dramatically improve outcomes in high-poverty areas. This isn't traditional education spending. It's coordinated social services delivered where children already are. Pair this with your choice framework and my innovation zones. Now parents can choose between traditional academic focus, STEM specialty, arts integration, project-based learning, or community school model depending on their child's needs. All schools held to the same transparency and accountability standards, all required to serve diverse learners, all competing on educational quality rather than student selection. This is both choice and equity, principles both parties claim to value.
Here's an uncomfortable truth for my fellow conservatives. We can't simultaneously claim teachers are crucial to American success while paying them wages that require summer jobs and second careers. The national average teacher's salary is $66,000, but in many states it's far lower, often requiring a master's degree that costs $50,000 to $80,000. This is unsustainable and frankly disrespectful. We should be recruiting our brightest college graduates into teaching, but instead they choose higher-paying fields. However, and this is critical, simply raising all teacher salaries uniformly doesn't solve the quality problem. We need performance-based compensation that rewards excellence. Master teachers who consistently produce exceptional student growth should earn $100,000 to $120,000, making teaching competitive with other professional careers. But teachers who aren't effective need additional training and support, and if that doesn't work, they need to be counseled out of the profession. The current system where seniority determines everything protects mediocrity. Let's create career ladders. Novice teacher, professional teacher, master teacher, each level with higher pay but also higher expectations and demonstrated results. Use multiple measures: student growth data, peer observations, principal evaluations, student surveys, professional development completion. This professionalizes teaching while ensuring accountability, and eliminate the current process for removing ineffective teachers. If someone can't succeed after 2 years of intensive support, they should pursue a different career.
Tom, I'm genuinely glad you're acknowledging that teacher pay is inadequate. That's not a given from Republican politicians. But let's talk about why your performance-based pay model sounds good in theory, but fails in practice. First, student growth measures are valuable but imperfect, especially for teachers who work with the most challenging students or who teach subjects without standardized tests. The art teacher, the music teacher, the special education teacher working with severely disabled students. How do you measure their performance in ways that aren't subjective? When we implement performance pay, teachers rationally avoid the hardest assignments because low test scores threaten their income. Second, teaching isn't like sales where individual performance is easily measured. Great teachers collaborate, share resources, mentor new colleagues. Performance pay destroys that collaboration and creates competition. Here's my alternative: raise base teacher salaries to professional levels competitive with other careers requiring master's degrees. Start at $60,000 for novice teachers. Scale up to $85,000 to $95,000 for experienced educators. This makes teaching financially sustainable. Then add stipends for additional responsibilities, mentoring new teachers, curriculum development, leading professional learning communities, national board certification. These recognize contribution without ranking teachers against each other. For accountability, maintain rigorous but fair evaluation systems using multiple measures, but use them for improvement and support, not punitive pay cuts.
Lily, you make fair points about the limitations of performance metrics. And I don't want to create a system where teachers compete rather than collaborate. But I also can't accept a system where tenure protections make it nearly impossible to remove ineffective teachers. Here's where I think we can meet. Implement your professional salary scale that makes teaching financially competitive. I agree that base pay should be strong enough that teachers aren't choosing between career and financial security. But let's add my career ladder concept differently. Not as performance pay, but as career advancement. Master teacher positions with additional compensation come with additional responsibilities. Mentoring novice teachers, leading professional development, developing curriculum, conducting demonstration lessons. These positions are merit-based, but evaluated through multiple measures, including peer recommendation, not just test scores. This creates professional growth opportunities within teaching, rather than forcing good teachers into administration. For accountability, use your multiple measure evaluation system, but include student growth data as one component where appropriate. Teachers who struggle receive intensive support, pairing with a master teacher, professional development, reduced class sizes for 1 year. If they still can't demonstrate competency after 2 years of support, employment ends. This isn't about test scores, it's about basic professional standards. Can the teacher manage a classroom, teach the curriculum, communicate with parents, assess student learning? And let's address teacher working conditions, which affect both recruitment and retention. Limit class sizes to 22 in elementary and 28 in high school. Provide common planning time. Supply teachers with adequate materials and technology without requiring personal purchases. These working conditions matter as much as salary.
Tom, now we're building a real professional model for teaching. Your career ladder as advancement rather than competition changes everything. It creates growth opportunities without destroying collaboration. Master teacher positions with mentoring responsibilities would transform how we develop new educators. Right now, we throw new teachers into classrooms with minimal support and half washout in 5 years. Your mentorship model would change that. I love your 2-year intensive support before termination. That's fair to teachers while maintaining standards. And fortunately, you're willing to address class sizes and working conditions. Those aren't luxuries, they're prerequisites for effective teaching. Let me add to this: comprehensive paid professional development. Teachers currently pay for their own continuing education while working full-time. Instead, districts should provide 5 paid professional development days per year, plus summer institutes for those who want them. Cover substitutes during the school year, pay stipends for summer work. Teachers choose from menu of options aligned to their development needs and interests. This keeps educators current, prevents burnout, and signals respect for teaching as a profession requiring continuous learning. And let's tackle teacher preparation programs. Many universities produce teachers who aren't classroom ready. Create partnerships between school districts and universities where master teachers help design preparation programs and mentor student teachers intensively, not the current model of occasional observations. Require a full-year residency teaching under a master teacher before licensure. This apprenticeship model, common in other professions, would dramatically improve teacher quality entering the workforce.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. What we're teaching in American schools has become unnecessarily politicized, and it's failing to prepare students for either college or careers. We need to return to rigorous academic standards focused on core knowledge and skills. Mathematics, science, literature, history, civics, writing. These fundamentals create educated citizens and qualified workers. But we've allowed curriculum to become diluted with social engineering and feel-good programming that doesn't serve students. The testing obsession from No Child Left Behind destroyed learning by forcing teachers to spend months preparing for standardized tests rather than teaching subject matter deeply. I'm all for accountability, but the current system measures compliance, not learning. Here's what I propose. Establish clear, rigorous academic standards in core subjects developed by subject matter experts, not politicians. But give teachers and schools autonomy in how they teach those standards. Eliminate high-stakes testing that determines funding and school ratings. Instead, use sample-based assessment. Randomly selected students take comprehensive tests that measure system-level performance without putting individual students and teachers under impossible pressure. Add portfolio assessment, where students demonstrate learning through projects, essays, problem-solving. This shows genuine understanding rather than test-taking ability. And we need to add practical skills, financial literacy, basic computer programming, logic and reasoning, Media literacy, so students can evaluate information sources. These are crucial for success in modern America.
Tom, I'm glad you recognize the testing regime is strangling authentic learning. That's not something I expected to agree on. But let's be clear about the politicization of curriculum. When you say we need to avoid social engineering, what you often mean is teaching history accurately, including the parts that make us uncomfortable. Students need to learn about slavery, Jim Crow, the Civil Rights Movement, Native American history, women's suffrage, not as political statements but as historical facts. They need to understand how government actually works, including how to participate as citizens. Critical thinking means examining multiple perspectives, evaluating evidence, forming reasoned arguments. That's not political, that's intellectual development. Where I agree with you completely, we need rigorous academic standards, meaningful assessment beyond test-taking, and practical life skills. Your sample-based assessment is brilliant. It removes the pressure from individual students while still providing system-level accountability. Portfolio assessment shows genuine learning. And yes, financial literacy, media literacy, civic education, these are essential. Here's what I'd add: culturally responsive curriculum that reflects America's diversity and allows all students to see themselves in what they're learning. Not propaganda, but inclusion. Literature by diverse authors. History that includes contributions from all communities. Science that acknowledges women and people of color who advance knowledge. This isn't lowering standards, it's expanding them to reflect reality.
Lily, when you frame it that way, teaching complete history with multiple perspectives, helping students evaluate evidence and form reasoned conclusions, I'm completely on board. That is education, not indoctrination. What concerns me is when curriculum becomes one-dimensional, presenting contemporary political views as historical fact, or teaching students what to think rather than how to think. But evidence-based history, diverse literature, acknowledgement of all Americans, contributions, that's just accuracy. So let's establish this clearly. Curriculum standards developed collaboratively by historians, scientists, educators, and subject experts. Content that's evidence-based, age-appropriate, and comprehensive. Pedagogical approaches that develop critical thinking, not memorization. Local flexibility in implementation while maintaining rigor. Here's where we can innovate. Modular curriculum design, where schools choose from vetted options aligned to standards. Want to teach the Civil War through primary sources? There's a module. Through literature from the period, another module. Through military strategy and its impacts, another option. All rigorous, all meeting standards, but allowing teacher and community preferences. And let's require civic education at multiple grade levels. High school students should understand the Constitution, how Congress works, federalism, civil rights and civil liberties, how to participate in democracy, not partisan civics. Foundational civics. Include a capstone senior project where students identify a community problem and develop a solution proposal, engaging with local government and community organizations. This makes civics concrete and empowers students as citizens.
Tom, your capstone civic engagement project is excellent. Experiential civics that develops both knowledge and skills. And modular curriculum with vetted options respects local communities while maintaining standards. That's the balance we need. Let me build on your financial literacy example. That should start in middle school with basics, progress through high school with more complexity. Students graduate understanding credit, debt, budgeting, taxes, investing, insurance. This isn't optional. It's essential. Similarly, with media literacy, which we need desperately, students should learn to identify credible sources, recognize propaganda techniques, fact-check information, understand how social media algorithms shape what they see. In an age of misinformation, these are survival skills. Start in middle school, integrate throughout high school, and yes, computer science fundamentals. Not everyone needs to be a programmer, but everyone should understand basic logic, computational thinking, how algorithms work, digital citizenship, online safety. Here's what we've built together. Rigorous academic standards in core subjects, developed by experts, with local flexibility in implementation. Sample-based and portfolio assessment replacing high-stakes testing. comprehensive civics education with experiential components, financial literacy, media literacy, and digital literacy as required components, culturally inclusive curriculum reflecting America's full history and diversity, critical thinking and evidence-based reasoning as pedagogical cornerstones, and elimination of teaching to the test culture.
Over the past 20 minutes, Lily and I have done something that seemed impossible when we started. We've developed a comprehensive education reform plan that addresses both conservative and progressive concerns while keeping students at the center. Let me summarize what we've agreed to. First, structural funding reform. Decouple school funding from property taxes, create state-level formulas ensuring baseline equity, add federal supplements for high-need students, and implement weighted student funding where money follows the child, with additional resources for students who need more support. This addresses the fundamental inequality in American education. Second, school choice with accountability. Transparent choice systems allowing families options between traditional public schools, innovation zone schools, and charter schools. But all schools must meet the same accountability standards, serve all students proportionally, and provide full transparency. Choice without cherry-picking. Schools that fail intervention standards get closed regardless of model. Third, professional teaching standards. Competitive salaries starting at $60,000 and scaling to $85,000 to $95,000. Master teacher positions at $100,000 to $120,000 for those taking on mentoring and leadership roles. Multiple measure evaluation focused on growth. 2-year intensive support for struggling teachers, manageable class sizes, comprehensive paid professional development, and year-long clinical residencies before licensure. Fourth, comprehensive curriculum. Rigorous academic standards developed by experts with local implementation flexibility, sample-based and portfolio assessment replacing high-stakes testing, financial literacy, media literacy, civic education with experiential components, and culturally inclusive content that reflects America's full history.
And I'll outline why this comprehensive plan would transform American education. First, the equity reforms ensure that every child, regardless of zip code, has access to quality education with adequate resources. We're not just talking about equal opportunity. We're providing equal resources for unequal needs, which is true equity. Students in struggling communities would finally have modern facilities, technology, small class sizes, and quality teachers. Second, the accountability framework means parents have real choices, backed by real information. No more schools, charter or traditional, hiding behind marketing while delivering substandard education. Every school succeeds or faces intervention. This builds public trust in education because we're measuring what matters. Are students learning and growing? Third, professionalizing teaching addresses the teacher shortage while raising quality. When we treat teachers as professionals, pay them appropriately, provide real support, and maintain high standards, we attract talented people and help them succeed. Teacher retention improves, reducing the disruption caused by constant turnover. Students benefit from experienced, skilled, supported educators. Fourth, our curriculum and assessment reforms free teachers to actually teach instead of teaching to tests. Students learn critical thinking, not test-taking tricks. They develop practical skills for citizenship and career success. And by teaching complete, honest history and literature, we prepare students for a diverse world. This plan costs money, yes, probably an additional $50 to $80 billion annually in federal investment. But that's a rounding error in the federal budget, and the return on investment is enormous. Better educated citizens earn more, pay more taxes, require fewer social services, participate more in democracy, and drive innovation.
What makes this plan politically viable is that it gives something to everyone while compromising nowhere on quality or accountability. Conservatives get school choice, local control, performance accountability, and fiscal responsibility through the 80-20 rule, getting resources into classrooms. Progressives get equity in funding, professional teacher support, comprehensive curriculum, and protection against privatization abuse. But more importantly, both sides get what we all claim to want: better outcomes for students. This isn't splitting the difference. It's genuinely solving problems that partisan politics have left festering for decades. The implementation strategy matters. Phase 1. Immediate legislation on competition reforms, PBM-style transparency for education spending, and funding formula changes. These can pass quickly, with bipartisan support. Phase 2. Year 1. Begin increasing teacher salaries and implementing innovation zones. Start developing sample-based assessment frameworks. Phase 3. Years 2 through 3. Fully implement new funding formulas, launch master teacher programs, establish clinical residencies, roll out comprehensive curriculum standards. Phase 4. Year 5 evaluation. Make adjustments. Scale successful programs. We include sunset provisions requiring congressional review every 5 years to ensure the system is working as intended and allow mid-course corrections. No more permanent programs that outlive their usefulness. This shows we're serious about results, not just creating new bureaucracies.
The most important thing about this plan is that it's built on evidence, not ideology. Every component has been proven to work somewhere. We're just finally implementing them all together, comprehensively. Equitable funding works. It's been proven in states that have implemented it. School accountability works when it's fair and comprehensive. Professional teacher development works. Finland and Singapore demonstrate this. Reduced testing with portfolio assessment works. Many innovative schools use this successfully. Financial literacy, media literacy, civic education, all proven to improve student outcomes and life success. We've taken the best ideas from across the political spectrum and combined them into a coherent system. And here's what gives me hope. If two AI politicians can work through deep ideological differences to find common ground on education reform, human politicians can too. This requires political courage, willingness to anger special interests, to compromise on sacred cows, to admit that the other side has some good ideas. But the stakes couldn't be higher. America's future depends on educating this generation effectively. Our economic competitiveness, our democracy, our ability to solve complex problems all depend on quality education. This plan provides a roadmap. It won't be easy. Implementation will face resistance from entrenched interests, whether that's unions protecting the status quo or private companies wanting unrestricted charter expansion. But if we keep students at the center, make decisions based on evidence rather than ideology, and hold everyone accountable for results, we can transform American education within a decade. Every child in America deserves a quality education that prepares them for college, career, and citizenship. This plan delivers that. It's achievable, it's affordable, and most importantly, it works.
Americans across the political spectrum love their children and want them to succeed. That's the foundation on which we build educational reform. When we focus on what works rather than what polls well, when we prioritize students over special interests, when we combine the best of market accountability with the best of public investment, we create something truly transformative. This conversation has shown that the divide on education isn't as wide as politicians make it seem. We can have choice and equity, accountability and support, high standards and inclusive curriculum, innovation and public commitment. These aren't contradictions, they're complementary when implemented thoughtfully. To every parent, teacher, student, and taxpayer watching, this plan is achievable. It requires political will, sustained commitment, and willingness to embrace complexity rather than retreat to talking points. But if an AI Republican and an AI Democrat can forge this comprehensive solution, surely human leaders can find the courage to do the same. Our children are counting on us. Let's give them the education system they deserve, one that sees their potential, supports their growth, and prepares them for lives of meaning and contribution. Thank you for watching, and more importantly, thank you for caring about America's future enough to engage with these critical issues. The solutions exist. We just need the will to implement them.